Hello, everybody. It's Jake Gino, host of Jake Gino podcast here with my co-host, the multi-family mentor, the coach, chef, the father, six, the best-selling author, the G Daddy, Gino Barbo. Gino, how's it going?
Jake, I'm doing good today, brother. How you doing?
Always making it happen, big man. Today, we're joined by the founder and CEO of Frontline Source Group. His award-winning firm delivers top-tier staffing solutions nationwide, connecting companies with exceptional talent. Today, he will share insights on leadership, hiring strategies, and how Frontline creates lasting value by aligning people, culture, and businesses for long-term goal success. So without further ado, Bill Kasko, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. I feel like I need a nickname too. I just, I feel like I should have had a special shirt made for this show. So I'm excited.
We'll get to know you a little more, and I'm quick with the alliterations, and I'll slap something up before we get out of here. Don't you worry about it. I got your back.
Billy the Kid, brother. He's got
Billy the Kid Kasko, brother.
There we go. No, I appreciate it. Excited. Thank you, guys.
Hey, it's our pleasure. Just want to get to know you a little bit better. So would love to hear about, the company, the formation, and the story there.
Yeah, so we've been around for 21 years, and I started. I worked for a Fortune 500 before, and came up with an idea. Came home one day and thought, I just wanted to stay in the space, but I wanted to do something different. I wanted to specialize. I was an IT guy. I wanted to specialize in placing ERP system, SAP, large system like consultants, where you place one or two people with a company and you make a ton of money, right? And so I came home and I pitched it to my wife, and she thought, that sounds fantastic, right? And so we launched the company 21 years later.
You already lost me. ERP, SAP, and a large one-time make the bang. You got to do like English for us.
You got to slow it down, Bill.
Yeah, because I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, man. You're talking about apartment guys. We're real estate guys. We don't know about ERP and SAPs and TYGs.
It's like enterprise-wide systems that run these companies.
Like BlackBerry?
Yeah, bigger than a BlackBerry, right? I mean, we're talking, these guys, you pay them $150 an hour and you bill your client $300 an hour, right? And I saw it as a niche kind of area that I enjoyed the technology, and I thought, man, this would be a lot of fun. And of course my wife's like, yeah, I mean, whatever, that sounds great. And so I launched this company, and 21 years later, we've never placed an ERP SAP person ever, not even one time.
Because no one knows what it is.
I know, that was the whole problem. And so I look back and basically I started a company. I had this crazy idea. I'm a big Seinfeld fan. And there's an episode of Seinfeld. It's called the Costanza Theory. And I literally, it was been on our wall in our corporate office. It's the Costanza Theory. And I built the company around the idea of doing the exact opposite of what everybody else does. So if you're not familiar with that episode, George is in the diner. He's doing everything the opposite and it's working. And Jerry says, hey, that attractive woman's looking at you. And he's like, why would she look at me? And he goes, if it's true and you're doing the opposite, go talk to her. He goes over, he says, hi, my name is George. I'm unemployed. I live with my parents and I'm balding. She kicks back the chair and says, have a seat. And so that's what we started the company on, was the idea that just because everybody else does it a certain way, you don't have to do it that way. And so we started it that way. And it was funny because the first few years, we actually had pushback from customers, employers that we would reach out to or have conversations with. And they would say, well, that's not the way it's done in the business. That's not the way you do it. This is the way you do it. This is the way it has to be done, blah, blah, blah. And it was interesting. It was like a fight. And what we realized was that this was a really closed-in industry, the employment and staffing, but it was way more complex than I was actually really familiar with. And there were a lot of different pieces to it. And we were going to do it. So we were going to build this company doing the opposite. We were going to embrace technology. It was not an industry 21 years ago. I mean, we were still using a fax machine and we had email, but we weren't using it right. We weren't using the advancement of technology at all. And so it was really a cool time to get into it and have some fun. Just little crazy things that we look back at today and think, geez, you've got to be kidding me. That's what happened. So yeah, we built the company today, like 32 locations across the country. Our footprint's nationwide. Our clients range from, 5 people operations to the largest employer in the entire world. So we're really proud of where we've been.
Bill, we were just talking about AI offline, and I want to get into the AI piece, but how has hiring changed? How has the employee mindset changed? Before you answer that question, one thing that annoys me during 2020, during COVID, the employees would be like, you know what, I'm going to stay at home. I don't want to return to the office. And I get a feeling of sometimes employees feel as if it's not really, they don't really value their job sometimes. It's as if like they're doing the employer a favor. And I'm looking from the employer side because I've owned the business since 1994. Has that changed from like when you've been doing it? How do you see that change? And how has hiring and the employee changed since you started the business?
That's a whole episode you could talk about, because if you go back 20 years ago, we used to say, an employer, everybody, it was like, well, you go out and you find your pool of people. And there were a pool of individuals looking for work. And 20 years ago, I said, in like 15, 20 years, that pool is going to dry up. And we're going to actually end up with a talent war at some point because supply and demand aren't going to match up. So we went through, the ability to
20 years ago, there was a bigger pool.
Massive. It was completely different. But as
Why?
technology started to improve, and this job elimination thing, this isn't brand new. This isn't something.
So there should be a bigger pool then if jobs are being eliminated then.
Well, you had jobs eliminating, but you had people getting out of the workforce. We have time gaps of different groups and ages of intellectual property and things that they're doing from technology of what they're adding value to that started getting out of the workforce. So when you look at numbers that are released every week of workforce participation, those are the individuals that are actually participating in the workforce.
So participation declined?
Yeah. Yeah, it declined because you have an aging workforce. So as your workforce starts to age, they come out, and we're not populating.
Is that because we're below replacement on births?
Exactly. So when you look like an India and a China, and you look at these areas where they're like 6-8 kids to a family, whatever, and we're sitting over here at like 1.3, which I'm not sure how that works out exactly. It's not going. It's at some point you have this happen, and so technology comes in to fill those roles and positions. Look, let's go back to when I was like 11 years old and I had my first job, and it was a paper boy delivering newspapers. And as technology got better, we don't have that anymore. I don't even know if newspapers are barely around. You can see them at the airport.
So less jobs and less participation in the workforce. But you're saying the job. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around this. So
you can't. That's the problem.
But I think we can though. Hold on though. So if there's less people participating in the workforce and there's less jobs, you're saying what it sounds like you're saying is the participation. There's more jobs.
There are more jobs. Yeah.
Because so that makes the gap even worse then.
What you have are different types of jobs too, right? Because when you advance in technology, you actually create new opportunities. But doesn't mean that you have the resources to necessarily fill everything.
Got it.
But then you also end up with this gap in this area. And when COVID happened, that gap became even wider because we went through not only a time of this change, work from home, changing workforce, what are we going to do? But we also ended up with this going through, after was, the great resignation that we went through, but the increase in pay and salaries. And we went like a snap of a finger from saying, hey, I need a $10 an hour receptionist to that receptionist is now $22 an hour. So what do companies do? Well, companies all of a sudden said, well, you know what? We don't need the receptionist. We're going to spend the money on the technology and upgrade our phone system because voice over IP was advancing with cloud-based operations. And we could eliminate that. We'll do a one-time expense and then a monthly cost of maybe a couple $100. It's a lot less than what we're going to pay for over here.
Hey, I want to go back to it sounds like the root. I don't know if it's the root, but if you go back to what we're talking about replacement, it seems that there's this effort for population reduction throughout the world, and if the birth rate is declining, we're going to fall apart as a society. It sounds like if we don't have the people to staff these jobs, and you have an aging population, what happens to the elderly? What happens to society if we can't fill these roles?
That we have a declining population in certain parts of the world, right?
What is our replacement? 1.6, and it needs to be like 2.3 or something like that? I think those are the numbers.
Right? Because in the past, like China always they would always replace with one to make sure somebody was replaced. And then they did a big push to increase families, right? Because they needed more workers. For us as the United States as society, our change has been financially driven in many ways, based on cost and everything else. And when you start looking at those numbers and looking at the cost, you then start to run into a declining time frame when we had less births. So you end up with these different gaps. Even during, if you look at COVID, what we're running into right now is some higher education individuals where there's a big skills gap, like doctors and dentists. A basic dentist, still difficult to find. There's not an extra group out there, but individuals that are specialized in surgeries of different types, you're seeing a gap. You've got a 4 to 5 year gap from the COVID time that people said, you know what, I'm not going to school anymore. I'm just going to go and get to work and I'm going to do this. Well, it didn't seem like a bad deal back then, but guess what? Now, fast forward, that it was already a small, again, not a pool, not a pond, not a lake, a cup. It's just like a drop. You don't have any extras to replace the ones that are coming out. Also, the older we get, the less we want to work 68 hours a week anymore, right? So now we want to work less. Now we want to work part-time. I had a call with a client yesterday, a healthcare company. They have 200 something locations across the country. They want to hire like hundreds and hundreds of people for part-time work on an as-needed basis. Like, I need you today, need you to do it tomorrow.
Why?
Cost. They want to bring their costs down. The problem is you can't do it from traditional manners because hiring traditionally isn't like that anymore. So all of this comes into play that there's so many moving parts of the way that things have changed. If we go back to the gig economy, think about the gig economy and what took place when people started doing side gigs, side hustles, doing their own 1099 things from a technology piece. You took them out. They were doing sides. They're doing this. Okay. That creates a gap that's lost because they're not necessarily taking full-time positions with companies. Mm-hmm. It also creates a problem when you're a large corporation, Microsoft, Facebook, Meta, this stuff, Apple, yet the smaller startup that's, I don't want to call mom and pop, but 50 person or less, they can't afford to pay the salaries of what a Google's tossing out to somebody to come on board. And so what are they left with? They're left with less, or they're having to go hire third parties or outsource, offshore it, hire somebody in India who's going to cost less to do it. But guess what? Now AI is there encoding for us. And so maybe that's going to fill our gap. And I bring it all up because history repeats itself. If there's one thing we all know, that history will repeat itself. And I go back to growing up and coming home, or my dad coming home and bringing our first microwave into the house. And it took like 4 of us to carry it into the house, right? Because it was like a coffin. And you bring it in, you plug it in, and he's like, guys, in 10 years, we're not going to have cooks anymore in restaurants. It's going to be microwaves. And then fast forward today. And God bless Denny and IHOP because, they've got like 12 microwaves, but they still have to have somebody cook. They had to adapt and change. And that's exactly what we're having to do with the AI and the technology and the growth and the change that are taking place in the workforce. It's change, it's evolving. When we dream of things like this and we want it to happen, we make things happen. It's like talking about we're going to have a recession. You talk about it long enough, we're going to have one, right? And it's the same thing. We want robots. We've been making movies about this for years.
That's where I was going. I feel like the AI is a component. It's the software for the hardware, right? The robots, combined with the AI is where I think you actually get, some of these lower wage job replacement. And I think Amazon's already doing it with their sorting and whatnot in the warehousing, correct?
Yeah. And if you look at just something simple, I was in the San Diego, or maybe it was San Francisco airport. I can't remember, one of the two, where they had an automated coffee maker robot. And you think, because I remember seeing it years ago in Vegas. Like,
thank God these baristas are getting so rude these days, right?
Well, and again, think about, that's a good example.
Yeah.
Right? Go to work for Starbucks. They're going to pay you like $18 an hour, pay for your college, get your healthcare.
Yeah. And treat the customer like shit.
And they don't want to wear a Starbucks shirt. They complain about
They don't want to be
uniform.
associated.
Dude, I've dropped Kroger because we used to go to Kroger and now we only go to Publix simply because they treat you better. They're nice when you walk in the door.
Yeah, it's the human touch though, and that's the part that won't go away at the end of the day. And so it's a matter of understanding, how do I use it? How do I embrace it? And the other piece of this is that we're in our world, we're used to technology changing every 18 to 36 months, right? Maybe 24. Man, they're launching new AI stuff like every 18, 24 hours. It's something new. And so we're bombarded with new, try this, do this. It's going to make you better. It's going to help you there. And then the disinformation and information that's not correct that comes from it also still, if we think that social media did a number on us by influencing, we haven't seen anything yet.
Bill, before we get to the AI, this is more of a selfish question for myself because I want to get an expert's opinion on this and not something from the internet. This return to office.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, like for me, I'll give you my real estate thing. It kills cities like New York. If you're going to tell everybody to stay home, I mean, you're just basically drying up the city. I mean, when I was there a couple of years ago with Jake, we went in there, trains were half empty. I mean, great, everyone's working from home, but the economy for the city suffers. And I just see it as people not being as efficient as possible. Now, there are a lot of jobs that you could probably do from home, but if you're going to build a company and a culture that's based, and you have salespeople, I just think that being in the office a couple of days a week at least helps. Now, there are companies nowadays that are being built completely remote. Maybe that's what it is. But what are your thoughts on return to office and working remotely?
Yeah, a lot of parts on this thing. The work from home worked for us at a time, but it also, it screwed up these new workers coming into the workforce, right?
Expectation wise.
Yeah, it just the kids coming out of college that never went to the office in the beginning and worked remote never had that experience of what that was like. And so then now you're telling them to come back in and it's freaking them out and they've got PTSD and they're dramatic about it and it's horrible.
God, you're making me sick to my stomach right now. Just thinking someone is so weak.
It's a little pathetic. I'm not going to joke.
It's fucking pathetic, man.
And then, but I was like anti-remote for years. And why? Because real estate's expensive and companies are looking at the same thing. Like, we're paying for this stuff. If I'm looking at my genie bottle down the road, I see that we have a home shortage, housing shortage in this country, in this world. We're going to continue to run into it. We're going to start seeing more transition of buildings into housing over time. Companies will start dumping it when they can get out of their leases. They're going to figure it out. The problem is figuring out how to make it work right. It didn't work perfect during COVID, but it got us all doing video more than we ever did. It got us using the technology more. It got us more high-speed internet across the world. But I also we have a partner with us, a vendor partner, truly a part of our company, I say. They're completely remote. And my biggest beef with them is that their communication between each other sucks because it's just horrible. They don't have it set up right. And so companies that understand how to do it and set it up right, train, communicate in the right way, have video calls, meet as a team, grow the team up doing it that way, seem to be more successful than the ones that all of a sudden jump in and transition. The other part of this, and New York's a great example. I mean, the cost of daycare and childcare is stupid. And so what we saw were a lot of people saying, well, I have to work remote because I have to work at home because I have a kid. And you're like, well,
are you babysitting? Are you working?
That's just it. And that's what you end up with. You end up with a lot of that going on behind the scenes. And then all it takes are one or two people to burn that bridge and somebody pulls the plug on it. We caught people over the last 2 years, and specifically, I hate saying it because I'm an IT guy, but within IT, who were working remote, will only work remote, and they were working for two companies at the same time.
That's what I was going to say, 3.
Yeah, I didn't have 3. We did have 2. And we had an opportunity with a client. They went through the interview, got to the end, and he literally came back and said, well, I'm going to need like 50,000 more because I'll have to quit my other job. And we were like, your other job? What are you talking about? Well, yeah, I work another full-time job at the same time. Like, oh my God. I just was like, I'd heard about it, but I never experienced it. And, that's the burning factor that companies are scared of also.
Well, I think people are disillusioned because well, I should say delusional. I was at the UPS store across the street a couple weeks ago, and the lady online literally said, I've had such an efficient day today. I've gone to the bank, I've gone to Publix, I've come here. And I'm like, well, have you done
Sounds like
any
a
work?
nice little Friday.
I'm like, on whose dime? Like, I don't understand. Like, is it, and I get it, but at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, is like the work ethic. I mean, I don't understand. Like, if it's an 8-hour job and you can do it in 3 hours, why are you getting paid for 8 hours? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's very challenging.
So Hilton Hotel, a client of ours, call center, call reps, right? So created a program years ago, which I think it was phenomenal because it was call representatives of the spouses of military people because they didn't care where you lived. They could care less. But the military spouses finding employment is very difficult. If you didn't know this, one, why? Well, prior to COVID, if you looked at their resume, they moved around a lot. Employers didn't like that. I mean, again, that's another part of the shift that's happened where employers look at it like, it's not that big of a deal anymore. Well, no, because the average tenure in the US is 1.8 years. So they've got to look at it.
I was wondering that.
Yeah, there's a Bureau of Labor Statistics puts it out. We actually put it on our website and publish it because I think it's important that people understand what the real numbers are. They don't do it every year. It's like every other year they put it out.
Do you have historicals on those?
Yeah, it's on our website. There's a graphic that we have.
Do you know like roughly 5-year increments how it's changed?
It's all on there.
Yeah. What's the website? Where can they go find it?
Frontlinesourcegroup.com.
Do you know roughly? Okay, so 1.8 years. Do you know, like off the top of your head, what it was 10 years ago? Can you take a guess what you think it was, or no?
Oh, but now you're making me go look at it, so I don't look like I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I'm just curious because I'm guessing it's, at some point it was the average tenure was 4 years, and then it was 3, and now it's below 2, right?
So if I go back to I'm looking at it right now, 1987, the total 25 to 34 years old was 2.9 years. And,
so it's declined a full year.
Yeah, well, it's 2.7 for a 25 to 34 year old, but a 20 to 24 year old for 2024 came in at 1.4. Men were 1.5 at that same age group.
What do we know, or like what do we guess the reason is for the decline?
Job change, opportunities, new things, money, technology.
Do you think any of the onus is on the employer?
Well, it depends how you look at that, right? Because I think that employers held intellectual property and people learning things back by putting so much emphasis on, I only want to hire somebody with like 15 years experience, 10 years. They were only at that job for 10 years. Am I going to hire a person who's been at the same position doing the same thing for 10 years? Or am I going to be more interested in someone who's had 3 different positions in the same industry over that same 10-year period, and they can explain to me why, because they work for different companies and we're learning different things. Like, how do companies learn what their competition is doing? Part of that is hiring. When they hire someone in and they're like, oh, they were in the same industry, they learned, I don't know, tell me about XYZ company. That's interesting. We never thought about doing that. That's how companies do that. Leadership doesn't go and ask their competition, hey guys, how are you doing that? If they're looking to grow their business, when they hire someone new and they bring them in, they're looking at that new person to give us what value.
They're buying intel.
Yeah. I mean, help us out here, right?
Bill, we got Jake Stenziano here. I this question is burning right now for me. He's a great employer, great dude. He's just amazing at hiring. What is Jake Stenziano doing right? I mean, what should, if I'm an employer and I'm really crushing it at hiring, what am I doing right to attract that talent, to retain that talent? What am I doing?
Again, it depends on that situation. Every company is different in their cultural side of how they're going to grow, what the goals are, the positions, the people. It's not a cookie cutter answer.
Because you sound like a lawyer, Bill. Lawyers say it depends. You sound like a lawyer to me. But
I live in a very gray area because we answer to 2. It could just be Jake. It could be that people resonate towards that individual. It could be the vision of the company. It could be the pay. I don't know. It could be the way he motivates or trains or pushes people. There are all these different factors. It depends on the size of the company. Is it
Well,
200
you're
people?
placing people, right? What
Yeah.
and it's you get some that are like, I'm between these two positions or this, that, and the other thing. Like, what's tilting the scales in people's decision making?
If they're employed, which most of them are, right? The question for us always comes down to the why, which is the first thing we have to drill into. Why are you even open to making a change? And it does come to, well, I want to see some new stuff. I've been doing this. I'm looking for new things. Stuff's changing around me. This company isn't changing. They're not using AI. They're not advancing at all. I don't see my career growing 5 years down the road. I'm kind of stale at what I'm making. They're not. They recognize, and it goes back, I think, Gino, to what you brought up in the beginning. Also, this industry of employment is driven by who's in charge. Is the employer in charge, or is the candidate, the person looking for work, the employee in charge?
Who is right now?
Who's running the asylum is what I always say. And today, what's happening is that the employer is in control.
Since when?
Since last about September, it flipped. We
Jake,
went
we
through the
said
Great
that.
Resignation, where
Yeah.
everybody was. Let me tell you, they were interviewing out the wazoo. They were the employment people were hiring. We needed to hire these people. This was good stuff going on 2022, 2023, right? We're jumping back in here. The candidate, and I'm gonna use the candidate because it could be the employee, but let's just call them candidates. They recognized that if they wanted to get a raise, everybody was looking at the trend. All I got to do is go find another job and interview. I secure this position. I'm going to get a pay increase and averaging 10, 15, 20% increase in my pay. I got a job. Now I'm going to go back to my current employer and I'm going to turn in my notice. And when that current employer finds out that I'm going to leave, let's say it's even a 20% increase. If they have to call Bill and pay Bill 25% is what we're going to charge them to find somebody, not only am I going to have to pay Bill 25, but now I'm going to have to train Jake for the next 3 years on how to do that position and run that job.
No, you're not, because you're not even going to have him for 3. You're going to have him for a year and a half. You're gonna train him until he leaves.
Yeah, until he leaves, right? But then if that happens, Bill's going to replace him again. It's better for me just to pay the 20%. Okay, now Bill's in the middle of this, and I have gone through all the process to get Jake the job. And Jake's like, I'm taking it. I signed my deal. I'm committed. I'm going to start in 2 weeks. Jake goes back, tells the employer says, give me a day. Jake says, okay. Employer comes back, goes, I'm going to give you a pay increase of this. I'm going to give you an extra week of vacation. We'll pay for you to get some additional training. Jake goes, wonderful, fantastic. That's great. Jake doesn't tell Bill. Jake doesn't tell Bill 9 times out of 10 until the morning or the day of. And if Bill's lucky, he gets a text message from Jake saying, hey, my employer countered and I'm going to go ahead and stay.
That sucks. That's horrible. 9 times out of 10. You talk about what's in it for me kind of people. Wow. That's why they're employees and not employers.
If we got the phone call prior, we would tell Jake, let me tell you historically what's going to happen, Jake. This is a big mistake. You have put your employer in a terrible position. They're going to remember this. And when it gets tough, the first person they're going to cut is going to be you because you're not loyal to them. You need to understand what you're doing. I'm not worried about it. This is for my family. I got to do what I do. Totally understand that. Respect it. I wish you the best of luck. Fast forward 2 years, last September, October. We start going through the slowdown before the election of the world's going to end. They start layoffs. Who do you think we get the first phone calls from? Jake. What do you think we say? Jake, remember that conversation we had? Wish you the best of luck, buddy. Why? Because during that time, we lost millions because we're contingent. We're only paid for being successful. They played us also. And we can't question that. And because when they get hired by our client, they then become a client. So if we piss them off, it doesn't do us any good, right? So I live in a gray area where some answers are it has so much to do with what's around it that it makes it difficult to give those straight answers all the time. Then you throw in the AI piece of it, and the AI question of it is that AI today can't make that rationalization of these things, which is why from a job security standpoint, we feel pretty good today about what we do because that middle ground is there. Now, the employer wasn't mad at us. They got it. They understood. And they were like, we get it. Go find us another one. And you're like, are you serious? I mean, these people just don't exist. But when it switched and all of a sudden the employee candidate wasn't in charge anymore, what we saw was, hey, you want 80,000 a year, they're going to offer you 79,000. And the candidate said, okay, I'll take it because they recognize it. But you also had the people that all of a sudden went off the market. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right where I'm at. I'm keeping my mouth shut. I don't even want to talk to you guys. I don't want anybody knowing I'm even interested. So then we had to change the way we do things. So it became over the last really 9 months. The last 9 months have been rough on businesses, not just from our industry, but just businesses also, to figure out our people are overworked. We need to hire. How do we look at saving some revenue, some money? Where do we cut? What do we do? We've got empty offices. Let's bring them back. How do we dump things? How do we cut? How do we cut expenses? But yet we need to hire. It's tough. It's really tough. And then I think, we talked in the beginning about numbers in the government and what they tell us. Those numbers that they told us last year of employment numbers were lost. And I've been on the Federal Reserve Advisory Board.
An interesting coincidence, wasn't it?
I've been on this Federal Reserve Advisory Board for the Beige Book for like 16, 17 years. And last year I told them every 6 weeks, those numbers aren't real. And they kept saying, no, they're real. And I went, they're not real, guys.
But it wasn't 100,000 or 200,000. It was 1 million. They weren't even. It wasn't even like, oh, we made a little clerical error. They were off by a ton of. It wasn't even. It was so fabricated. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't even.
I would joke and say that they apparently hired all the guys that used to work at Enron because they couldn't add anything up. It just not right. So now the numbers we're getting now are more realistic, and they align with the trends that we see. And so the job market and what's taking place is actually, it's really strong. It is strong because it's difficult to get the people to make the move and find the right people with a skill. And so it is, but it's changed. And that's the piece. Like we used to call it temporary staffing. It's kind of not there anymore because it goes to the pool. People would take a temporary job to supplement the government money. Well, that's changed. Government money is much easier. We've made it easier for people. So making these changes on things, people go through hard times. It was supposed to be there to help you, not to be a crutch. So I love the idea of saying, hey, if you want to keep getting your money, that's fine, but you got to at least do something. Give something back to people. Don't just take, because that's what they would do. I can't tell you how many times we had that call where they're like, well, I don't want to lose my unemployment. Well, guess what? Now that you just said that, I can turn you in. So it's not a matter of that. There's opportunity. Go do it.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor. And on the other side, I'm hoping that Jake can dive into AI a little bit because I think that's an important conversation we need to have. This episode of the Jake and Gino podcast is brought to you by Wheelbarrow Profits, the premier multifamily education community. Wheelbarrow Profits proof is in their results. Their members have closed over 86,000 units. That's over $5 billion in student deal volume. Are you serious about taking your real estate game to the next level? Do you have the confidence to take action? Schedule a call with the Wheelbarrow Profits team today and supercharge your real estate knowledge. Build lasting relationships through unparalleled networking opportunities. Obtain lasting knowledge on how to buy multifamily real estate with intensive training. Gain hands-on experience through their live events with like-minded individuals and industry professionals, all while experiencing the personal touch and family atmosphere that set them apart. Visit wheelbarrowprofits.com for more information.
All right, we are back. I don't want to talk about AI. So the September 2024, the employer is now in control. Prior to that, in my personal experience, it seemed horrible. Reckless. It seemed like unstable as an employer because it's getting harder to run your business. You remember hotels, restaurants, any hospitality. It was a shit show, as not as an employer, but as a customer. And you're starting to see like it just didn't feel stable as a society. So I'm glad that slowed down, because when you're in it and you're hiring and trying to, run your business, you start to freak out a little bit. Like, when is this the new normal? And that was the fear. And thank God, the money's burned off and people got re-engaged, and it's I see it in our business, but it's reassuring, it's refreshing. It's just good to hear someone in your position saying this, because we feel it now and it's changed, but it's good. I wanted to ask you, when in say we'll call it September 2024, what we also saw was I don't know if it was the exact time, but a market flip, if you will, from a seller's hold or a seller dominance to the buyers are now gaining control. And what I was wondering, if you've seen historically, has a buyer's market been aligned with an employer controlled market? Is there some sort of connection there? Because I see it through this cycle.
Yeah. I think anytime you have expansion, you have that happen. But, if you really think about the market switch with that too, like to get to 2023, where the individual, the candidate wasn't really in control, and because you went through a shit show is the only way to put it.
Yes.
Before COVID, we were already building up to that, but we had been on a run since 2008 where you had the large pool of candidates that were out there and the employer was still in control, right? And if you look at 2008, you think about that, we went off the cliff, both from the employer and in the individual. It was both. During your typical recession that you go through, you have a decline in the employers hiring employees directly as direct employees. Instead, they augment their need by hiring temporary to come in. So in 2008, we went off the cliff. Both were not hiring. They were not hiring any employees whatsoever.
But the employer was in control, though.
Well, the employer was in a free fall because you had lack of cash, credit, opportunities. It looked like.
But I still think what I'm saying is like that was making it harder as an employee to find a job if you're unemployed at that time. So if there was, go ahead.
Made the employee go figure out something new.
Okay.
Right. That's what led us to starting down this road of this gig economy. It made people go, what else can I do? There's got to be other things out there. Well, how can I get the whole idea of a side hustle, the gig thing? This whole thing started. And it was because people were there going, I need to make more money. And we didn't have an increase then across the board in wages. I mean, we were still $10 an hour. I can remember people saying in 2008, hey, I need to hire somebody at $8 an hour. And I'm like, holy crud, minimum wage is $7.25. Oh, and they need to graduate from college at $10 an hour. And you're like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, there was a mindset for the employer that they thought there were all these people out there that would take something like that. And then the candidate started saying no, because then the government came in and supplemented.
What you're saying is amazing. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is an important analogy, because Jake and Gino, we got together in 2009 because I had a restaurant that was sucking wind. Jake had an employer who was sucking just as much as my restaurant was. And we're like, we need a side hustle. What are we going to do? Let's go buy real estate. And 2 years later, in 2011, we started looking to buy apartments. So I think what you're saying is so incredibly insightful. And when I look back at it, I can see a lot of people getting into side hustles back then. I was struggling. Why wasn't I making more money? All of a sudden, Uber, Grubhub, all these different things start coming up at that time. And you have technology coming in as well. Technology, the internet starting to change. And I'm like, wow, that's an amazing, you've made an incredible. And now that I'm just trying to think why my journey was what it was. And you just nailed it, because it was so hard back then. And for both sides, because I was an employer not making money. So what a great point. Thanks for sharing.
Take that, Gino, and go fast forward, right? Think of how many years it took where it's almost embedded in us now. It's kind of normal. And then look at those different phases over time of things that have done that to us. And then I know you want to talk about AI, but talk about AI to recognize normally we would be watching at that, making a change in what we're doing 4 to 5, 6 years from now? It's not. AI started, if you really look back at ChatGPT and the introduction of that to all of us and think about, let's just go back to last August, September and look at how are we different just from then to today? And the technology and how we've embraced it and embedded it so much into what we're doing, where normally that would take years to think. Now go fast forward and think of what's going to be 4 or 5 years from now. I can't even imagine what it's going to be. I'm just trying to get through the rest of this year without it screwing up anything else for us. So there are timelines in parts where we shifted dynamically within society to get to where we're at today. These shifts that took place were not anomalies. They were things that led us to the next. So from 2008 to 2011, and if you look at hiring trends that took place in gaps, we had, another little, call it recession, whatever, oil and gas bust is what we call it, 15, 16, that reset. When we were all paying $4 or $5 a gallon for gas, freaking out about it, and oil companies were making a ton, and all of a sudden oil tanked, and you had a whole shift in the dynamic of an entire industry that was gone almost overnight. And so you went through all of this that changed what we were doing, and then all of a sudden it became the introduction of like electric vehicles popped into stuff. And then of course you've got, changes with COVID, and I still go back to COVID and go, we had 15% unemployment. That's horrible. But 85% were still working, guys. It wasn't, this is a massive engine that
and
we
25% were working 2 jobs.
So. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or 3, right? And I didn't even have to really knock on your door, just drop it at the door and run. And so, as you go forward, it's like, what's going to happen? What's going to change? How's it going to get better or worse?
So let's talk about that. Going back to 2020 to, I don't know, we'll call it 23, everyone's flush with cash. Things are flying off the shelves. People can't keep things in stock. And since then, over the last 2 years, it's slowed. I'm not saying it's a horrible economy right now, but it seems stagnant. Things aren't moving as fast, especially in the real estate space. Deals are falling apart. People are having to put them back together, yada, yada, yada. What turns this economy around? Because I'm not saying it's the worst economy we've ever seen, but if you go pre-COVID, I don't think it's a 2018, 2019 economy either, where things were 2018 to me, 2019 seemed very normalized. It seemed like a very normalized economy. What's it going to take to, start the economic engine again?
Well, it's already started. That's all there is to it. And if you look without,
it's early though. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but it's early. So
yeah,
why?
Well, it started the moment the election happened, and you recognized that it was going to become business friendly again, and that the regulations, things were going to change, right? And so if you look at the feeling and the attitude was on a more positive, upbeat note. But you go through, and we're in the middle of whatever it is. Sooner or later, this was going to happen, and that's really the discussion. Again, it doesn't happen. Sooner or later, someone was going to have to step up and say, enough's enough. It's got to happen. And this is screwed up. And this is not sustainable. We cannot last like this. And I remember growing up and my parents saying, someday you're going to have to pay for all this debt this country has, and it's going to come to time. And all we've done is kick the can, and no one has addressed it. No one has had the cojones to actually stand up and say it.
Kick the can is an understatement, But anyways, yeah.
And it was time. And what we've been through the last 9 months has been horrible for 90% of the businesses, because everybody's been affected in different ways. Now, are there some that have been better than others? Yeah, of course. But it's affected everybody, because as we said in the beginning, if you talk about it long enough, you're going to make it happen. And what it had to be was to see, no, we've got to fix this. We got to change it. We're going to have to go through this stuff as a country. If we don't stick together, we're not going to get there. I don't understand why some people don't recognize the fact that you just can't give stuff away for free. I don't know. I don't get it, but that's not me. It's way above my pay grade. I think, though, we're coming out on the back end of it. The demand that we're seeing is increasing every week. We see new clients coming on to the tune of like 20 to 30 a week, which is substantial. That's a large number in a given week for us. If I flash back to even January, it was maybe 4 to 5. And if I look historically, even to like 21, 22, when we came out of COVID and we're jumping back in, that's 8 or 9, which is normal and sustainable. Yeah, it's totally a
So
different
you're thinking it's like primed right now, like something in the next 12 to 24 months. This shit's because that's been my gut feeling, is that it's not. I don't think it's going to be necessarily this year, and I think there's a huge. I think if rates go down, that's going to be gas on a fire. I think if rates go down, you're going to see this thing just start to take off, and that's.
So here's the thing too. We're halfway through the year and budgets haven't been used, right? So you either have companies saying, you guys haven't used your budget, we're going to hold it back because we want to have more cash, or you're going to all of a sudden have them go, guys, you need to spend your budget. And so, the call was, okay, we get through we get through the election, get them sworn in. We got to get through January 6th. We got to get through all this stuff. Okay. And then it's like swear in, and it's Martin Luther King Day on top of that. So we're going to take a holiday. So now we're going to kick forward. Okay, let's get through Valentine's Day. And once we get through Valentine's Day, we'll start the hiring. And then it's like, oh, well, let's get through. And it was like, oh, let's get through Easter. And we kept kicking this can. And then the tariffs kicked in, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we can't do anything. We need to hang tight. We don't know how this is going to affect us. Okay. I mean, what difference is?
Well, you hear these pundits say everything's going to collapse by July 4th, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't, and we're still here. And so then we get through it, and you're looking at the numbers, and you're like, it's working. This is going to work, and he's realigning. And I'm sorry if the Canadians are upset at us. I don't know what to tell you, okay? But we're going to figure it out.
Last time I checked, we weren't Canadian.
If we're bringing more back to the U.S. for jobs, and we're bringing this stuff back that never should have left, then we're going to give opportunity to an entire generation that's coming up behind her with things to do, because they can't have a paper route. They're not going to work at McDonald's. There are jobs washing dishes that are gone. I was a caddy growing up on a golf course. I don't even know if they have those at that young age anymore, because they have golf carts. I mean, you look at all of this and it's like, how do we even instill work ethic anymore in these generations to teach them about the basics? Now let's give them an opportunity at least to learn technology and take a manufacturing job and actually make it glamorous, because you're going to need a college education and understanding of the technology to run all of these processes and robots as we go forward. So you can open up opportunity that we don't even know about yet. So I think, and again, my belief is second quarter was better than first quarter. Third quarter will be better than second quarter. And even though fourth quarter historically from a hiring perspective is not the best quarter of the year, I believe it's going to end up being the best. Now, let's throw out geopolitical things that take place, and let's get everybody calm down a little bit. China, they need us. We're going to get that worked out. The EU thing is going to be fine.
I personally want less dependency on China. I hope that relationship spreads apart a little bit, and we find ways to diversify that.
We should at least keep it into a safe world.
I'm not saying blow it up, but I mean, if we can reduce that by a good amount, I think that's good for us.
Absolutely. And it's starting, and we're figuring out different things. And so, this is part of that.
If that goes down over time, 25 to 50%, I think that's ultimately a good thing for the U.S. We don't need the cheap fucking doodads and gadgets and shit. It's all junk. You know? It really
I got more junk than I know what to do with, and every time again.
And you're propping up your competitor by doing it, right?
That's right. So. And so you got to pay the piper sooner or later. And I go back to that. Sooner or later, this all comes to a head. And I think we're at a pivotal point. And I think that we'll look back on this and be like, thank God it was tough. We had to go through it. It'll be in the history of what we had to reset to do. And as companies, we get stronger, we're leaner. I know for us, we embraced it. And even from an employment standpoint, it's hard to say. We spent millions on automation and eliminated internal positions. And it was just part of evolution for us.
It's the environmentalist in me. I want to see less plastic coming overseas from China. That's what it is. Right, Gino?
I don't know. I kind of like my plastic straws being back, so I don't know.
Dude, only chicks drink out of straws, Bill.
I don't have a problem with that.
Now, this may seem like a silly question to you, but I love being a guy in the street talking to cab drivers, Uber drivers, people at restaurants and things. I was in Vegas last year, and there seemed to be a little bit of a freak out from the cabbies, the servers, et cetera, especially in the higher end shops and things, that business was slowing. And it was, to your point, they were, we're waiting on the election, waiting on the election. Is Vegas like a precursor to the economy turning around when you start to see that frivolous money being spent again? And do you hire for Vegas, and what do you see there? You may not have an opinion about it, but to me, it seems like a precursor at times.
I think it's a sign, and I'll tell you what the sign is. It's Monday through Thursday is the sign. Because if you go on Friday and Saturday, the idiots are still there walking on the street with 3 kids in a stroller, and they have no reason that they should be there. Okay. There's a difference between what's in the casino and what's outside of the casino. And when you go in the casinos on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. and it's a ghost town, that discretionary spending, and especially the money coming from overseas, isn't going there like it was. So it's not just us, it's across the board. And I do think it does show. Now, the question really comes into play. Is it a matter of they're hurting or we're holding? And that discretionary spend is the question, because they're going on vacation. I was on a flight 2 weeks ago, and the flight was oversold. My daughter was on one just the other day, flying from Dallas back to New York. And I think they paid her like $1,000 to go on a next day flight because it was oversold. So it's not that people aren't traveling. It's just, what are they spending their money on that's different? And are they doing that because they're a little bit more cautious right now? Or is it because they're hurting? And I don't know. I don't know that. That's not my specialty. But I know that when you look at hospitality hiring and you look at that whole industry, they're still struggling to find people. And I still am blown away, because the number of illegals that came across over the last 4 years that went to work and were able to get Social Security cards and work permits, and it was a non-discussed item that took place. I mean, it's part of what was needed. But did we eliminate the jobs for the people in the U.S. because now it was no longer something that they could pay them less and do it in a way? And so, I don't know. It just doesn't there's so many conspiracy thoughts to this thing of what was the mindset to do this. I don't know. But I go through, I was at a hotel.
So I think part of it is, right, you got to look at Congress and census votes needed, right? And so if you have a mass migration to Florida and Texas from some of these states, and you're worried about holding positions in Congress, you got to backfill for the census, right? And I think that's where that was coming from. I think it's pretty cut and dry personally, but that's up for debate. That's my opinion, though. So
we were in a hotel in Park City, Utah, last month, and we checked in. It was like 9:30. Our flight was late, and the girl at the front desk, I'm like, oh, I asked something about, I needed something for the room, and she said, well, I'll see. It'll be about an hour till I can bring it back to you. And I went, you're the only person here? And she goes, yeah, I'm the only person overnight. And it was a nice hotel. And I went, well, you got to be kidding me. That's not even safe. And she said, well, we can't hire anybody to do that. And I thought,
so what happens if you get sick?
Yeah. I mean,
you say that to her, right? And then there's nobody there? Like, is this what we're doing now?
The interesting thing is that when you bring 11 million people over here and they get benefits, why would they go to work? That's the reality. Whereas 30 years ago, they came here for work. They didn't get anything. They had to work. So that's the other component of it. But Bill, my last question, I think this is an important one for me and for the listeners. We're hearing all of these trillions of dollars being pledged to this country, from whether it's from Saudi Arabia or from the EU. What is that going to do for the job market here? I mean, as far as them investing all of that money into this country, whether it's Apple, whether it's all these other companies, what do you see in the next 3-4 years? Because I know it does take a little bit of time to get permitting, to get all that, but that money pledged, and once they start, how does that affect the job market, the labor market?
We actually had a discussion about this a couple of weeks ago with a group of owners that I'm a part of, and that it's centered around the fact of, if we already have a shortage, and the technology specifically, does that mean we're going to have a large increase taking place on the H-1B visa situation? And so I think that's going to be something to really watch and keep a closer eye to, because that has become a really hotbed topic because of and maybe it'll change. Maybe they'll be able to change some of the government regulation around it. But during prior administration, some of the regulation that was put around the H-1B more to do with, you bring someone in with an H-1B, you open yourself up to now the government being in your business, even though you're a private business. And companies, they don't want that. And so it's been very interesting, but the only way to bring that skilled worker in at that volume and level is going to probably be to bring them in on visas more than what we've done in the past. And so it will be interesting to see. And then you're right, it is a trickle in. Just because they say we're going to spend $1 trillion, it doesn't happen like that. In fact, unfortunately, a lot of times that never even happens. And so, talk is cheap, money's different.
Interesting. What's the best way for folks to work with you, get a hold of you, find out more about your company?
So our website, it's really difficult. It's just the name of our company. So frontlinesourcegroup.com. It's a long one, but we figured it made it simple and easy. Visit the website. LinkedIn's probably one of the better places of all, because if you're even looking to hire or looking to make a career change, you should be there anyway. So LinkedIn, go to our company page, follow us there. Feel free to connect with me directly. Tell me you heard me on here. Love to connect with you and put you in touch. But, we've automated all of our stuff too. And so it's really about the first steps, because unfortunately we just can't talk to every single person, but we utilize that technology to make sure that you don't go in. We don't have a hole where you fall into. You're definitely, we're touching and communicating with you in the right way.
Gino, you got a story about a paper boy?
I do, but I got to go back to Bill's story. Bill Kasko, aka Billy the Kid, starts his business.
Billy the Kid, paper boy, man. That's what I'm saying.
But he starts his business a little over 20 years ago, and he just wants to hire these IT guys, this ERGT. It's way above Jake and Gino's pay grade. We don't even know what he's talking about. And you know what? We weren't the only morons, because nobody else did, because he never hired anybody for that position. But he pivoted. He said, I'm going to do what George Costanza does. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to be the contrarian. And I think over 20 years, the bumps and the bruises, he's seen the ups and the downs. And I love the analogy of 2008, seeing what's going on as far as people getting another side hustle. We call that an extra gig, right? We call that a side job. But now people nowadays, the trend it seems like it's continuing. And I would go on Bill's website. I would look at all the data on there, because it's really cool to see. And there's been a lot of insights for me, as seeing as where the employee had the upper hand, now the employer has the upper hand. And to me, if you're looking for a job, or if you're an employer who's looking to hire qualified candidates, go out and check out Bill's company.
Love it. Gang, as always, we believe in buying deals for the long term. Think in decades. I'm Jake. He is the G Daddy, and we make it happen. And if I have one more takeaway from this episode, buy some assets before the robot gets you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys.